Okay, so let's talk about the Johnny the Walrus controversy. Uh, the reason I want to talk about this is it prompted a pretty interesting debate in my Twitter circles. So, Matt Walsh, a conservative Catholic commentator for the Daily Wire, writes Johnny the Walrus, a children's book about a little boy who pretends to be a walrus, and then everybody goes crazy and thinks he really is a walrus. And of course, this is a troll. So, Walsh submits it to the LGBT category of Amazon books. It trends as the number one book in the LGBT category. Media goes crazy about it. GLAAD asks for the book to be taken off Amazon, and Amazon recategorizes it as a politics and social commentary book rather than an LGBT book. So there's the books themselves, and then there's the troll and Twitter arguments about the books. Now, some of the conservative types I was following are not Daily Wire people. They see Daily Wire as conservative ink, and they thought Johnny the Walrus was basically a waste of time. That whole argument could basically boil down to: are you a conservative who likes the Daily Wire or a conservative who hates the Daily Wire? If you think the Daily Wire is conservative ink, you're going to be predisposed to dislike Johnny the Walrus. If you think the Daily Wire is great, you're going to be predisposed to like Johnny the Walrus. So what I kind of want to do is I want to evaluate the reason I have both of these books is apparently Ashley St. Clair, another conservative social media influencer, has accused Matt Walsh of stealing her idea for a children's book on this topic. So I want to talk about both of these books as books and how they relate to the theme of LGBTQ issues. And I'll talk about whether I think Matt Walsh did rip it off. I don't think he did. I think it's too simple an idea. But I do think that Elephants Are Not Birds is a better quality children's book than Johnny the Walrus. And after I talk about the books, then I'll probably talk about the social media trolley stuff. So let's talk about Johnny the Walrus first. So it's a short board book. And board books, generally that's what, ages 2 to 5, maybe 2 to 4 are reading board books, but the vocabulary is higher than the age of a 2 to 5-year-old. So it's more like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old reading level. The illustrations by Kay Reese, I think they're cute. They're pretty sketchy and loose. So I think you can get away with a sketchy and loose style. Johnny kind of reminds me of Link from Wind Waker just a little bit. So yeah, you can do a sketchy and loose style, but I definitely get the feel that Daily Wire kind of cranked this book out. And I was a little disappointed by it. Like, the perfect joke would have been you get all of this social media kerfuffle about it, and then when you get the book and read it, it's a perfect children's book. That would be the perfect way of completing the joke, because then you could read it with a kid and not have any qualms or worry about the quality of it. So maybe problem number one is not particularly, it's not illustrated in like a luscious children's book style. I have no problem with loosey-goosey cartoon style, so I don't want to say anything more about the art style. And also, I think more of my problems are with how Matt Walsh chose to approach the topic. It's actually a really great idea for a children's story. This little boy with a big imagination, he likes to dress up as what? He likes to dress up as Godzilla, he likes to dress up as a knight, I guess like as a fish merman person, a crustacean, and crustacean's a hard word, like crab would be an easier word, dog, and a walrus. So instantly, I like this main character. He's a boy with an active imagination who likes dressing up and pretending to be a walrus. I wish that we spent more time, but dang it, we need to spend more time with the internal psychology of Johnny the Walrus. But he's easily the most interesting and fun part of the entire book. His mom posts a pic of him as a walrus on social media, and everyone on the internet tells her that, no, your son is not pretending to be a walrus. Your son really is a walrus. So what famous fairy tale is this kind of like? This is kind of like the Emperor's new clothes. The Emperor gets a new pair of expensive clothes, but he can't see them, and it looks like he's standing in his underwear. But the tailor tells him that only the wise can see these clothes, and the Emperor doesn't want to admit that he can't see the clothes, because that means he would have to admit that he's not wise. And all of his advisors and yes men pretend they see the clothes until one little boy says the Emperor has no clothes. And instead of throwing the kid in the dungeon for disrespecting the state and committing treason, all the adults laugh because it's a perfect fairy tale. tale, because the child sees through the BS that all the stupid adults are falling for, because the stupid adults are guided by their BS view of the world. I have to kiss up to the emperor. Oh God, I don't want to admit I don't know this thing, so I'm just going to pretend that I see it. And a kid sees through that. So that's basically the archetypal story for what Johnny the Walrus is. I feel like Walsh makes the error of making this more about the culture war of LGBTQ issues rather than letting the point of the book speak elegantly for itself. So if you were reading this to a kid, you'd have the problem that some of the vocabulary is too hard for a kid, and you'd actually have to explain a bit of what the heck's going on. So why does this person have a sign that says "Let Johnny transition"? Because this is alluding to LGBTQ trans culture issues. You might actually have to you might have your kid ask you awkward questions about what transitioning is and what being woke is. And if part of your point was you didn't want to expose that to them to that until they were ready, Johnny the Walrus might ironically force you to. No! Running out of storage space, so I got to go fast. All right. So is there anything wrong with portraying like the SJW wokies in a negative light? Not necessarily, but you pay a price for it. So it adds to the troll factor. Haha, look at the pink-haired Wookiee. But I think it possibly detracts from the art factor. It makes this book trollier and gives us all a good laugh at the SJWs. But, well, mommy, daddy, what's a woke doctor? What does woke mean? So maybe in contrast to this, I think Matt Krotz has said that Lewis believed that a good story's themes are so ingrained into the story that no one ever has to say what the theme of the story is. The theme of this story is about obeying Jesus. No, you get the point of the story just by seeing how the kids interact with Aslan. So it makes fun of the woke doctor for wanting to perform a surgery that will cut Johnny's feet into fins. Johnny dresses as a walrus and becomes more and more unhappy until a zookeeper who looks exactly like Matt Walsh, spits out some facts and logic and says, your boy is not a walrus. Now, one thing I don't like about this is, A, it's literally a self-insert, and B, I feel like it should actually be Johnny. So Johnny's the protagonist, so I feel like Johnny should be the one who makes the principal decision in the story, and that would connect him more to the boy in the Emperor's New Clothes. So in this world of silly adults who think he's a walrus, Johnny's the one who would have to be brave and say he's a walrus. Once mom realizes he's not a walrus, sanity is restored and she ignores culture. So the dumbed down point is, just because you say you're a walrus doesn't mean you're a walrus. Just because a boy dresses up as a princess one day, that doesn't make him trans. So it triggered everybody. And made this social media splash. So now let's talk about Ashley St. Clair's Elephants Are Not Birds. I do not think that, unless Ashley St. Clair has evidence that Matt Walsh directly stole her idea, I think the differences between the books are stark enough that it could just be a coincidence. I think it's very easy for someone to come up with the idea of writing a children's book that simply makes the point that you can't become something just by identifying as it. So leave that controversy aside. I do think Ashley St. Clair's book is a better children's book, and it sublimates the point into the book a lot better. So this makes me think of Dumbo. Dumbo's a movie about an elephant with big ears who wants to fly, and the magical idea of Dumbo is, for the purpose of this story, accept the idea that an elephant can fly, and then it becomes magic because Dumbo's weakness, his big ears, become his strength, and he can fly around. Ash does this really interesting thing where she reverses that. So Kevin the elephant, he loves to sing and he's happy doing his work. And then Culture the vulture hears him sing and says, well, if you sing well, then that means you must be a bird, right? And also, if you're a bird, you should be flying around and making nests. You're too good for this crummy work. So allegorically, Vulture is allegorically the Culture telling Kevin what to do. But his manipulation of Kevin is actually pretty subtle and pretty well written. He points to a positive quality that Kevin has and then suggests the lie to Kevin, and he sneaks a praise, like a prideful, you're too good for this, into the lie to make Kevin unhappy. So once he suggests to Kevin that maybe he really is a bird because he can sing, Kevin dresses up in a beak and wings, and he tries to be a bird, and he's not successful at it. This leads up to Kevin climbing the tree and wanting to fly because he figures, well, if I have wings, I should be able to fly, right? And after that fails, there's a fire, and Kevin realizes that he has to put out the fire with his trunk. So what's neat about this is it's the Dumbo story, and it's the opposite of the Dumbo story. Instead of Kevin learning to fly, Kevin learns that it's okay to be an elephant, and it's actually good that he's an elephant. He doesn't have to let culture make him feel bad for being an elephant. Once he's put out the fire, he's able to see through culture's lie and ignore him and be happy as an elephant who can sing. Elegant, straightforward. We don't need any pink-haired woke scolds on Twitter to make the point. The story itself makes the point. Ashley then has like a bunch of like little family activities and games you can play with your kids. Basically, the only place she tips her hat is when she introduces herself. She introduces herself as a conservative influencer. I don't even know if you need to do that. When you go. Dang it, we're out of space. Let's wrap this up. So the point of art is to sublimate your ideas into a world that is expressed to the child, obviously, without you having to step up and say, the moral of the story is. Ashley's story does a better job of doing this than Matt Walsh. I love a good troll, so I'm not going to hate on Matt Walsh for pulling off a really good troll. But if we're going to do it, let's do it with narratives that express the point as well as possible. And I still like Johnny. I love kids who dress up as animals. We need more of that in the world. That's it. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I'm number one Scrappy Doo fan. I love you guys. Catch you later.